Friends, I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, which means we gotta wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. Before we go ahead and get started, we're live on Rumble, we're live on the X, we're live on Locals, and we're live on the Tubes, which is great news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live, the show that spotlights misconduct involving police, prosecutors, and politicians. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney, and today we're talking about Donald Trump. He is appealing the Chutkan Gag Order. We're very excited to see that. We knew it was coming because he said he was going to do it yesterday on the show. But today we got the actual order that was released, and we have the notice of appeal from Donald Trump. And so it's not the full appeal, right? The way this works, and I know it's kind of a little bit of a letdown when we hear the appeal. We're like, oh, perfect. We're going to get this big, juicy meatball that we're going to be able to sink our teeth into. Unfortunately, it's not that. It's just the notice of appeal, and it's pretty short, too. So we'll read through it. They just filed the notice. They say, we're appealing this, and then they actually prepare their appellate memorandum, so that'll come later. But we will read the notice of appeal, and we're going to learn more about what kind of appeal it is. It's called an interlocutory appeal, and we'll learn more about how rare this is and how difficult it is and what some of the consequences are of this. But the good news is Trump is trying to stop Judge Chutkan from wrecking his rights. We're also going to go through the actual gag order itself, because yesterday on the show, we did unpack what happened at the actual hearing, of course, in Washington, D.C., the D.C. Circuit Court. But the order is now out and it's available, so we can see exactly what Judge Chutkan is doing to censor Donald Trump and his campaign and his free speech, and really limit all of our rights to hear from him about the corrupt DOJ. So we're also being gagged, in a sense, unfortunately for all of us. We'll also hear some reaction from Christie and from Andrew Weissmann, two people who are not fans of Trump, so we'll see what they have to say about all that in our final segment. But we also have some other Trump updates because he returned back to New York court today. He was in session. You see, this is a GIF and or GIF of him seated inside the courtroom. There were not cameras inside the court today, although we do have some pre-trial camera work. All right, so when the trial started, they all had to exit out of there. But the cameras were in there before it started, and so we'll see what's going on. Trump also had a lot to say about this before the media, so he came out and gave a little bit of a speech that we'll listen into. Tish James is trying to get in on the media game, and so she's posting some statements about Trump as well. We'll hear from her. Generally not appropriate for prosecutors to get out there in front of the media and start making their case to the media, but this whole thing is not appropriate, so why not? You know, who cares? Then we've got the actual proceedings. Adam Klasfeld is over. He was in New York. He was in the courtroom there, and he was observing the civil fraud trial. And so we'll see what he had to say about it, go through a little bit of a tweet thread, and see if we can parse together the day's activities from Trump's trial that's currently underway in New York. But the big news on the day was the Republican House Speaker battle. And there's actually a lot of big news on the day, but this was one of them. And we talked about some of this on our members-only stream this morning when the first vote started, but Jim Jordan's looking like he might be falling short of this thing. They definitely fell short today. A lot of people voted no against Jim Jordan, who I happen to think is a pretty dang good candidate, quite frankly. And it's not looking good for him. And so the question is, are they going to be able to change this outcome by tomorrow? Because they will be back in session tomorrow to talk more about it. But we've got Olivia Beavers, who's going to report to us the 20 House GOP members who voted no and who they voted for. And so we'll see what happened with all this first. We've got some clips from Ken Buck and Congressman Gimenez, who are basically never Jordan at this point. And so we'll see. Are we going to return back to Kevin McCarthy? Are we going to go through this whole thing and Kevin McCarthy is going to be the Speaker of the House again? Oh, gosh. So we're going to go through all that, and we'll get up to speed on what happened today. Won't spend too much time on it, but just so we have our business attended to, we'll be looking at that. And of course, my friends, if you want to be a part of the show and contribute to this show's longevity by supporting us, financially, and by creating a very deep relationship with other fellow watchers, which is really the most important part of our community. Come and join us. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do a lot of fun stuff there. We have member-only streams in the morning. We had a stream already today. Already talked about a lot of good stuff this morning. And so we also do Saturday shows, and I've got a bunch of other stuff cooking, okay? All the stuff from Vid Summit that I was just at last week, all the stuff from Genius Network that I was at last week too, the week after that. Then all the stuff from the AI Summit and all the other stuff that I was just at a summit today on. Lots of cool stuff coming, and I can't wait to share it with you guys. So come and join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. You can also check out our website at robertgovea.com and check out the latest reports that are published on our website. So for example, if you don't have time to watch a full 90-minute show, I get it. You can just come here and just read a nice summary of what happened in this one report, and we translate everything, all the different segments, into various stories. And so yesterday's segments will be up live later on this evening, and we're going to be adding the PDFs in this week as well. So you can sign up for the daily newsletter. Check it out, robertgovea.com, and it is a great way to stay connected when we are digging into the show and the content here. And all right, and so we're going to have some more sponsors. We're going to start with a new sponsor tomorrow, and then we're going to just kind of, test around and experiment with some more of those. But today, no sponsors, and we appreciate you being a member and supporting us that way instead. So that's good for us. We can just get right into the meat and potatoes then, baby. So let's do it. Here's what we've got from the Republicans. Betrayal. Jim Jordan was ready to go, walked into Congress, and he was ready for his fellow Congresspeople, especially Republicans, to vote for him to be the next Speaker of the House. And we like Jim Jordan. He's done some very good work on the Judiciary Committee, sent a lot of letters that we've read through here to a bunch of people who needed to get letters. And so we were curious to see what he could do as the Speaker of the House. But unfortunately, the Republicans have some conservatives, so-called, like Ken Buck and Congressman Carlos Gimenez, one from Colorado, the other from Florida, who are going to explain to us why they didn't vote for Jim Jordan. And we can see it didn't look so good. We're going to go through each of the 20 Republicans who didn't vote for Jordan and then ask ourselves where this is going to go, because even Kevin McCarthy voted for Jim Jordan. And if they're not going to vote for Jim, if they're not going to vote for Scalise, who's next? Are we getting McCarthy back in the House? All right, well, here is what it sounded like when Jim Jordan lost the official vote as it was going on today. And we were covering a lot of this morning on our members only stream. We covered the quorum, and then we left, and we were concerned. We were thinking maybe we're going to come back here today with Jim Jordan as our new Speaker. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. This is what it sounded like.
Agree in their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 432, of which the Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 200 votes. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212 votes.
Jeffries got more votes.
The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 6 votes. Lee Zeldin of the state of New York has received 3.
Lee Zeldin?
The Honorable Steve Scalise of the state of Louisiana has received 7.
Scalise?
The Honorable Mike Garcia of the state of California has received 1. The Honorable Tom Emmer of the state of Minnesota has received 1. The Honorable Tom Cole of the state of Oklahoma has received 1. The Honorable Thomas Massey of the state of Kentucky received 1.
All right, we like Thomas Massey too, but
no person having received a majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the chair.
All right, so that was it, right? Now, so the Republicans have been floundering around for quite some time, and here are the people who were responsible for not allowing Jim Jordan to become the new Speaker. And here are the individuals. Bacon voted for McCarthy. So if these are any of your Congresspeople, you might want to, have an opinion about it. Bacon, Chavez de Ramir voted for McCarthy. So Bacon, McCarthy, Chavez, McCarthy, De Esposito, Zeldin, Diaz-Balart, Scalise, Elzy, Mike Garcia, Gambarino voted for Zeldin. Another Gimenez, who we'll hear from, voted for McCarthy. Gonzalez, Granger, and Kelly, all for Scalise. Another Kelly for Scalise. a couple more for McCarthy, Lawler McCarthy, LaMalfa McCarthy, and the rest were just kind of smattered around. So these are the people: Lalota, Lawler, Rutherford, Simpson, Womack, Buck, James, LaMalfa, and Spartz. Look, Victoria Spartz voted for Massey. Wow. And she said that, actually. We had heard her communicate that. So that's a lot of people who are not voting for Jim Jordan. And, I think they're coming back tomorrow for a second vote. But is that going to shake anybody loose? Is that going to change the final outcome? Probably not. Even Kevin McCarthy voted for Jim Jordan. This is what it sounded like.
McCarthy. Jordan.
Jordan. Nice job, Kev. Way to be a bigger man about it.
McCall. Jordan. McLean. Jordan. McClellan.
All right, so the rest of them voted, and obviously we know how it turned out. But McCarthy voted for Jim Jordan like a good Republican. And here are the people who did not, okay? Here is Ken Buck. He's from Colorado. And, man, we've been really irritated with him for quite some time here and communicated that he was going to be a problem because when Kevin was gone, let me back up. When Kevin was in power, we had some pretty good momentum going, didn't we? We had the impeachment proceedings happening. We had the oversight committee that was just steamrolling ahead. I mean, we had letters here that we were reading like at least once or twice a week from the oversight committee. Boom, 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 boom. We had a Biden impeachment inquiry hearing. Like it didn't, wasn't that great, but it was pretty good. And they were, supposed to be on that path for quite some time. Like we were on the on-ramp towards some progress. And then, everything got deviated, and you can have your opinion on that. But now we're here, and my concern from the very beginning was this guy, Ken Buck. And what is he going to be doing to get his vote? Because he was the loudest voice back during the McCarthy era of a person to say that the Biden impeachment stuff should not happen, right? He was complaining about Republicans criticizing the DOJ. We can't call them illegitimate or the Department of Injustice, or we can't threaten to defund special counsel Jack Smith. How dare we? Right? That's like his number one issue. And so now if he's going to be this teeter-totter tiebreaker vote one way or the other, who is promising him what in order to get him to flip? And that's where I get concerned. Is he going to say, all right, I'll vote for you, but you got to stop. You got to drop the defund Jack Smith stuff. Or I'll vote for you, Jim Jordan, but you got to stop the impeachment inquiry stuff. Okay, leave Joe Biden out of it and just focus on Hunter or something. Right? We don't know what happens behind these closed doors. That's why we get so sick when they are behind closed doors.
I had a nice 30, 40-minute conversation with Jim last night. It is not personal. I have a lot of respect for Jim, and we both have sort of risen in the conservative movement and share many of the values of the conservative movement. I think that what Jim Jordan needs to do is to stop talking about defunding the Department of Justice.
Right.
We pride ourselves on being a party of the rule of law. You can't defund the Department of Justice or defund a special counsel's office in the Department of Justice.
What? We are a party of the rule of law. We do like the law, including the Constitution. And what's a nice feature of the law that we like? It's called equal protection of the law there, Buck.
And talk about the value that we share. So there are a number of different issues related to the election and some not related to the election.
You are a hard no? I mean, is there anything that he can do, anything that he can promise, any change that he can make to get your vote?
I will not vote for Jim Jordan.
I will not vote for Jim Jordan. So this dumb buck in Congress is really trying to deviate some progress on Jim Jordan being the speaker. Will never vote for him no matter what. And he's not alone. Here's another guy. This is Carlos Gimenez, who's also going to be a never Jordan. Here's what he says.
Do you think those tactics have been out of bounds, and do you worry what might happen if you do vote no against Jordan tomorrow?
Look, I've spoken to Jim Jordan. Whatever happens, happens. It's kind of ironic.
Tell me about that conversation.
I said, look, you don't use the kind of tactics against your own members, and then you start to spread lies and misinformation. He denied that he's doing it. I'll take him at his word. But those are his followers. He said he asked his followers not to do that anymore, yet they continue to do that. So Here are your followers not heeding your call, Mr. Speaker designee. And so at this point, I just can't. I can't vote for Jim Jordan. I'll vote for Kevin McCarthy, and then we'll see where the chips fall.
Do you have any?
I know that. Look, the numbers initially were like 59 in favor. I think a lot of them had fallen off. I think some of them have succumbed to pressure. Maybe this pressure campaign is working on some. I'll tell you what, it'll never work on me. You can take away all my committees. You can put me in the basement. I'm committed to my vote, and no matter what you do, that's the way I'm going to vote.
All right, we have another one from him, and I think that they're going to put Kev back in power, aren't they?
The framing of one of the other holdouts who flipped their vote, Ann Wagner, who had told us on Friday she was a hell no on Jim Jordan, put out a statement today in which she says there's too much at stake to hand over control of the House to radical liberal Democrats, which is why we must elect a conservative as the next speaker. I mean, do you agree with that framing that essentially at this point it's Jim Jordan or handing the reins over to Democrats?
Last I heard, there's about 220 conservative Republicans here in the House. It's not, Jim Jordan doesn't have a stranglehold on that title. I'm a conservative Republican. I'm not asking for the post. I'm one, and I know many others are conservative Republicans. So it's not Jim Jordan or bust. There's still a heck of a lot of good people here on this side that we have to take a look at. And I think we need to come to a consensus candidate. Now, it could be that Jim Jordan becomes the Speaker of the House. I'll congratulate him, and I'll go on my way, and then let's see what happens. But at this point, I don't think so. I think that we can find somebody else inside the conference, our conference, not a Democrat, that has true conservative principles that will guide the entire conference, and not one wing or another wing, but the entire, somebody who can unify us all. And that's what I'm looking for.
They're going to bring back Kev. There isn't anybody else. And by the way, Kev barely got it done anyways, right? We have, the Republican Party is so fractured. If it's not Scalise, if it's not Jordan, who's it going to be? Carlos Gimenez. Do you want to be Speaker, Carlos? Do you have Speaker envy, my friend? So it's going to be, I think, McCarthy again. I mean, honestly, I don't know what else they're going to do. They're going to put him back up. It's going to be just a joke. Here's McCarthy talking about it and explaining why it's the Democrats' fault. And even Congress, I think Fox gives it back to him a little bit in this one.
McCarthy. Let's listen to Kevin McCarthy here.
Now we have rules. We don't have to be stuck on the floor. The interesting part is why we're here. Every single Democrat voted to stop one branch of government. They created this mess with 8.
Is that a fire alarm in the background? Where the hell is Jamal Bowman? Anybody have eyes on him? I don't know what that noise is.
Republicans. Every single Democrat did that. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go sit down. We'll talk to those that have difference of opinion and come back.
Did the margin surprise you?
Thank you. You feel bad for Mr. Do you feel bad right now for Mr. Jordan? You threw your support for him. Do you feel bad for him?
No. Don't over read into this. This is about the same vote I had on my first vote out. Why we're in the no. Let's go back to how I got here. We wouldn't be here if every single Democrat didn't vote with 8 Republicans to shut this place down. That's it. No,
Republicans voted against Jim Jordan today on the floor, including 2 votes from somebody who's not even a member anymore.
Every single Democrat and 8 Republicans voted to shut down one branch of government. That is why we're here today. There's no other reason why we're here today but because of that. Now we had a vote on the floor. It didn't get to the whole point. Now we'll take a break, talk to people, and come back and solve it.
So how long? Is this going to be today?
All right. He's getting ready for his report now. Now it's time to report. All right. So that, my friends, is what's happening. Now, Congress is supposed to be back on Wednesday to dig into it again. We'll see if we have a speaker. What if we wake up and it's Kevin McCarthy again? Oh, gosh. Anyways, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do, my friends. All right. Now, let's get into some updates in the Trump trial. Donald Trump returns to trial in New York, being prosecuted by Tish James the biggest Tishy in New York City. And she also is responding to Donald Trump. She is now posting these new things on X where she's communicating about how strong her case is, which is very an interesting thing for a prosecutor to be doing. But we're going to go through this now. Trump returned. He took some time off from the trial. No cameras in the courtroom while the trial was proceeding. We will catch up on the trial activities, courtesy of a Twitter X thread, don't ban me, Elon, from our friend Adam Klasfeld. But there was some camera action inside the courtroom before the trial started, and Fox had their cameras in there. This is what it looked like.
Sometimes we've seen the judge, Arthur Engeron. Sometimes we have not. So we just want to share this with our viewers and see how much of a view we get today.
There will be a lot of discussion about the political implications of all of this ongoing, as he is obviously running for president again. He has sort of made this a key part of his 2024 presidential.
All right, so that's Donald Trump. You can see it's Alina Amba, who is to his left, and we've got Christopher Keese over to his right. So he's flanked by his lawyers, and that is Trump looking focused, looking a little bit furious, to be quite frank, that this is happening to his businesses right in New York City. So they're going to pan over to the prosecutors, or the government in this case, since this is a civil case, but let's see what they look like.
Campaign. He seized on this civil fraud trial. And he's sort of,
there's James.
This is Letitia James, and this is sort of an extension of the campaign trail for him. It has not hurt him.
Yeah.
Now, once again, Letitia James, who always comes out and talks a big game, right? We've got a clip from her coming up. We'll listen to her talk about how tough she is. She's not even trying this case, right? And now I know what you'll say. Some other government people will say, well, you know, that's just because she's elected official and they never try cases like this. Well, she ran for office saying that she was going to prosecute Trump. We've got a dozen clips of her saying it. And so now she's going to sit in the back of the courtroom and she's going to have all these white guys prosecuting Trump? What the heck, man? It's a bunch of white dudes up here. White guy, white guy, white guy, white guy, white woman, other white guy. So it's just like, oh my God, I don't know. Anyways, so it's supposed to be like this, you know, this heroic woman who is going to be leading this charge, and she's like this new leader in America. And it's just, she's not even representing this case. I don't know. It's a strange situation. And so there's Donald Trump, who's sitting back there being prosecuted by Letitia James. And she's not even prosecuting the case at all. She's just sitting in the back letting everybody else do it. It's very weird. So anyways, this is Donald Trump now. He was there, and he is speaking to the media, communicating about what he thinks about this entire fake show trial brought by Tishy.
Yes, it will be. What's your response to Chutkan Gag Order? So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're at a trial today that should not be taking place. As you know.
All right, so that audio is much worse than I anticipated it would be. So let's go ahead and boost the volume a bit and see what we can get out of this.
So, the head of Deutsche Bank recently testified, and he said that Trump did nothing wrong. We made a loan. We were very happy with the loan. We got paid back. There were no defaults. It was a very good transaction, and he would do it again. He was a very powerful witness. And we have other executives coming in from banks that will say the same thing. This is a disgraceful situation. This is an attorney general, Letitia, that went out and campaigned on, I will get Trump. I will get Trump no matter what. I'll get Trump, I promise I'll get him. We have 2 tapes on her now that have come out since the trial because people took tapes of her because they couldn't believe her ranting and raving like a lunatic. But this is the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, and she should be allowed to be Attorney General. She's defrauded the public with this trial. She said that Mar-a-Lago, she convinced the judge that Mar-a-Lago was worth in Palm Beach, Florida, the most expensive land in the world, I guess. And the most expensive house is definitely in the world. In Mar-a-Lago, the biggest house, the most spectacular place in all of Florida, was worth $18 million when it's worth approximately, could be close to 100 times that amount. And based on that testimony and based on her convincing the judge that Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million instead of $1 billion to $1.5 billion, which would sell very easily, which we've already proven, but we'll have people come up and say that and prove it, the most important people, the brokers that make the sales. But based on that, he ruled against me. He ruled fraud. I mean, he said fraud. They are the fraudulent people because they ruled the house that was worth 18. They put down it's worth 18 million, and it's worth maybe close to 100 times that amount. And based on that, they ruled against me, having to do with fraud, which is a big statement. But they are the frauds because the house is worth $1 billion, $1.5 billion, 750 million, and it's worth a fortune. It's the most expensive house probably in the world, and they said it was worth $18 million. And they don't do anything about it. Based on that, and also Doral, they have Doral at a very low number, and it's worth many times the number that they put. So they chose to do this. So I just want to say the head of Deutsche Bank came in. He said we were great. The loan was great. Everything was fine. And it was perfect. And this was their witness. It wasn't even my witness. And we have other bankers coming in saying the same thing. We built a great company. Got a lot of cash. Got a lot of great assets. Got some of the greatest real estate assets anywhere in the world. It's really been an honor to have built it. And we worked hard with my family. And my children are involved in this, and they don't deserve to be involved in this. This is a witch hunt by a radical lunatic attorney general that shouldn't be allowed to be an attorney general.
All right, so now it's interesting to listen to Trump speak. You know, I know the audio is kind of bad on this, but we're sticking with it for a minute. But this is Trump. Okay, he just got a gag order from Judge Chutkan in a different trial. And the gag order from Chutkan referenced his comments in the New York trial, which is the one we're in now. So in other words, the prosecutors in the criminal case in Washington, D.C. told the judge Trump was talking about the judge's girlfriend or Engeron's girlfriend or whatever his, clerk was, because she's whispering in his ear. And the judge is, probably just being fed whatever from whomever to do whatever needs to be done in this case. So the same situation is, Trump is commenting on the case. He just got gagged about it from Chutkan. And he also got gagged about it in this case about the court staff. But he's not talking about the court staff. He's talking about the lunatic, the radical lunatic, Tish James. And we already know that he can't call Jack Smith the deranged thug that he is, a deranged thug, So is a radical lunatic, is that allowed or not? We're tap dancing around this free speech problem here.
Very unfair. We don't get a jury trial. There's no jury. And we don't have any choice. Somebody said we could have checked the box or something. We don't check the box. This is a statute.
Okay, so this is another point. Now, this has come up several times, okay? And they, on the left, all of the, commentators that you'll find everywhere, would say that Alina Abba screwed this up. They say Alina Abba screwed this whole thing up because she didn't check the right box. And she didn't check a box, and that means that Trump didn't get a jury trial. You may have seen this all over the place. Now, to be fair, there was a form that was submitted that apparently was submitted by Trump's team that says bench trial rather than jury trial. But that's not why they don't get a jury trial. It's by statute. But they said that Alina, who they try to make you believe is just some stupid person who Trump hired because she happens to not have a nice face. Not so, okay? Brilliant legal analysis from the one and only Alina Abba. And she submitted the form appropriately, but they're all trying to smear her because she's better looking than them for filling out the form wrong, and that's what Trump is talking about, okay? The judge didn't give him a jury because he can't by statute, according to his interpretation of it, not because she filled the form wrong.
That was never used before, never once used before for anything like this. I'm the first one. Isn't that nice? And I should be in Iowa now. I should be in New Hampshire now. I should be in South Carolina now or someplace else campaigning.
Right.
The good news is we're about 60 points up on everybody, and we're leading Biden by 11. And that's why they're doing this, because this is all coming out of Washington. The judge is going to make a decision. Now, the judge, I've got to respect the judge and like the judge. I like him, but it's not fair because I don't know how he can make a fair decision on this. He's got all the Democrats pushing him left and right, pushing him around like a pinball. And it's a very unfair situation that they put me in. I want a jury. I'm entitled to a jury. But this is a case that should have never been brought. And just to conclude, they said I overvalued my financial statements. Well, actually, the financial statements are undervalued by tremendous amounts of money. They're very conservative. They're undervalued. The actual work is much more than that. So therefore, there's no fraud. They don't mention that there's a disclaimer clause. There's a big disclaimer, which it says basically do your own due diligence. Don't even rely on the financial statements. Again, the financial statements are the actual statement is very much less than the actual work. The actual work is higher, so therefore it's very conservative, and that's what the banks got. And therefore there's no fraud. Then there's no fraud because there's a disclaimer clause at the beginning and all throughout the financial statements. It says do your own work, do not rely on these statements. 100% do not rely on these statements. And third thing is, I was tried under a statute that's never been used before that doesn't allow you to have a jury. I'm not allowed to have a jury. I never heard of that before. I don't get the option. If I begged for a jury, they wouldn't give me a jury. I get no jury. The judge is going to make a decision. He's a Democrat judge. He's very liberal. And I believe he's under a lot of pressure. This is a rigged trial. This is a rigged situation. And our country can't stand these things.
It's bad.
And the people of our country understand it. We're being railroaded. And I have other trials we're being railroaded. You saw yesterday when they take away my right to speak. I won't be able to speak like I'm speaking to you. And I'm not saying anything wrong. I'm saying the truth.
Right.
I won't be able to do this with that trial. Because the judge, which of course we're appealing, because the judge said basically I don't have a right to speak. And I'm the number one candidate leading the Republicans by 55 or 60 points. That should be over. And leading Joe Biden. And I'm being restricted. My speech has been taken away from me. I'm a candidate that's running for office, and I'm not allowed to speak. This is a railroad. It's all coming out of the Department of Justice. It's all set up by Biden and his thugs that he's surrounded with to try and sneak out an election victory that he's not entitled to win because he's been the worst president in the history of our country. Thank you very much.
Right on from Trump. All right. So good statement from him. And you know, Trump doesn't get enough credit. Okay. He just walked us through a very nice statement over 7 minutes, walking through bullet points about all the problems in this case and then responding to the gag order all simultaneously. So he's speaking about this. Tish James is also speaking about it. It's a little unusual to hear a prosecutor also come out and make these PR statements like this, but she might be doing it because Donald Trump is doing it, and she's just saying, well, this is the new standard right here. She says, this is Tishy.
Concluded the 7th day of our trial against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. One of those
Yeah, but you didn't do anything, Tish. You're sitting in the back of the courtroom. You're having a bunch of other people do it. What are you doing?
defendants is Alan Weisselberg, the former chief financial officer at the Trump Organization. Yesterday, we asked Mr. Weisselberg to confirm who had final sign-off on the fraudulent statements of financial condition at the center of our case. You know what he said? Good question. And it was a good question, one of more than 100 that Mr. Weisselberg could not answer. But Mr. Weisselberg was able to remember that Donald Trump himself reviewed the statements.
Whoa.
And today, our witness, Nicholas Haig, a former risk manager at Deutsche Bank, testified that he relied on those statements of financial condition to approve loans to the Trump Organization. Hundreds of millions of dollars in loans with unfairly advantageous terms. For years, Donald Trump evaded justice for his repeated and persistent fraud. And as we continue to present our case, we will show just how much he unfairly benefited as a result.
Wow, this is interesting. Have you ever seen anything quite like this? Remember, Trump just got scolded out of Washington, D.C. for trying to influence the jury pool. Remember that one? Chutkan said, he's got a lot of followers on Truth Social, and we're scared that he might say something offensive, and so he needs to be gagged as a result of it, right? Trump is a private citizen. Trump is somebody who has the presumption of innocence in most cases. This is a civil case, but she is a government official, a government attorney from the Attorney General's office of New York, coming out and just talking from an official position about prosecuting a political enemy of hers. It's insane that this is actually happening, right? other government prosecutors, other AGs, I think that they would agree with this, maybe not openly because they're too cowardly to admit it, but that this is unethical, it's inappropriate. You want to talk about influencing the court of public opinion or the jury pool, even though Trump's not getting a jury, that's exactly what this is. This is a propaganda statement that she is making from an official government position. And it is not impartial at all. It is not fair. It is her continuing exactly what she told us she was going to do, which is prosecute Trump. You've never seen this before because it's a new thing in America. Okay, we don't have attorney generals coming out and giving us daily updates about Trump. It's day 7. Let me do my book report from the back of the courtroom where she's not even participating in it. Okay, she reads from a teleprompter here because she can't think off the cuff. And she reads this speech that somebody else probably wrote for her as she has a bunch of other attorneys actually do the heavy lifting as she continues her political charade circus show trial. So that's what's happening in New York. And we're probably going to see a lot more of that as this happens. They're going to say, we have to fight back against Trump. But is she going to get gagged? Is the New York judge going to gag her for coming out there and trying to influence the court of public opinion? Okay, is Judge Chutkan going to blow a gasket over this one and give Trump back his free speech so that he can respond to some of these things? No, of course not. So here is what actually happened in the courtroom. Let's go over to Adam Klasfeld and see what happened. Now, he was in court for the civil trial today, and they're saying a couple updates from him. Now, we get into what's happening, and we have somebody who's back on the stand. Trial's back in session. Trump's in, a lot of photographs being taken, and the witness returns to the stand. The woman's name is Donna Kidder, right? She works for the Trump Organization as an accountant. Donna Kidder, Your Honor, the government recalls Donna Kidder back to the stand. Reminder, Donna, you're under oath. You understand, remember, you truthful. Yes, I do. So, okay, Miss Kidder. They say, I want to show you this spreadsheet. It was dated December 29th, 2016. And I believe this is the government who is asking the questions. Yes. They say, okay, Miss Kidder, I want to show you this spreadsheet that has already been introduced into evidence. It says here in this spreadsheet on this row, it says, quote, funding for TU settlement. What is that? Could TU mean Trump University? I don't know. It refers to a $25 million resolution of a prior New York Attorney General's case against Trump University. Exactly. All right, so previously, there was a Trump University case. This is from 2018. All right, this was settled back from Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman a long time ago. But they still want their pound of flesh out of Trump, even though they got him settling on the Trump University stuff. So they tell us, Kidder, who is the accountant, she's back on there. She says, what does TU mean? She says, yeah, that's Trump University. And it shows funding from various sources. So TU, there was funding from Mar-a-Lago, another loan, there was some cash and all the things. Now, Trump has his lawyer over at the table. His name is Cliff Robert. He's screaming, objection, Your Honor. This is a statute of limitations problem, okay? They're talking about Trump University. That's from 2018 and before. So it's too old. You've already made clear, Your Honor, that anything that is too old violates the statute of limitations and it cannot come into this trial. It's just too old. It's expired. So the judge says, well, it's a standing objection, but if you feel the need to say it every time, you're welcome to do that. And the judge, well, so I guess my response would be, if I was the lawyer, well, then why are we getting into this, Judge? Is it just to smear Trump, or is this to prove some other further point? Because if it's not allowed because it's too old and expired, then what are we wasting our time for? So Kidder, the accountant, says, so I used to track all the deals and the agreements for Ivanka Trump. And she says, here's one email from one spreadsheet. And apparently I performed this task for a long time, from 2010 through June of a couple of years ago. Again, the defense objects. Objection, Your Honor. He overruled. Now, they say the questioning now turns over to Ivanka Trump's penthouse. They say, I want to show you this email from 2014. Apparently, Ivanka Trump surrendered an option to buy one of the penthouses and was given to buy an option of another one for $14 million. This is one of the allegations, all right? New York Tishy is saying that Donald Trump lied about some numbers. The unit was valued at more. So, right, they've got options to buy different locations, and they're saying one is valuable, others valuable, not as valuable, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to read the whole paragraph. So they say that the testimony concludes, and they're saying Ivanka Trump apparently lowered the purchase price, and the figure was inaccurate. So $14 million was the valuation, but the purchase price option for the lease was actually $2 million less, literally 14.264, 12 to 264. So $2 million lower. All right. So Ivanka, finagled $2 million or whatever, allegedly. We're done with Kidder. So the Tishy's lawyers, not Letitia, but the other people that she has actually prosecuting this case, because they're probably a lot more intelligent than she is, but she's sitting in the back of the courtroom. And so they say, okay, Your Honor, next witness, the government calls Doug Larson. He's an executive at Newmark, and he's an ex-executive of Cushman and Wakefield, which is a big firm. They say, all right, government person says, I want to go over this spreadsheet with you, Mr. Larson. What year is this from? He says from 2016. Old. June 30th, 2016. And he says the New York Attorney General now turns his attention to 40 Wall Street. So on this spreadsheet, you see here 40 Wall Street. He's looking at the spreadsheet. He says, well, the valuation isn't reflected on the spreadsheet. A notation on the spreadsheet credited Larson anyways, he says. So he says, so I didn't actually put my valuation in here. So he does assessments, right? He's an executive VP. We don't know what he does, but apparently he's doing some valuations. They say, did you evaluate how much 40 Wall Street was worth? He says, no, my valuation actually isn't on the spreadsheet, but the notation here says that I did it, but I didn't. So oftentimes, you may do this in your businesses or wherever, but you'll notate someone's name. So for example, at my law firm, when I did anything, I would mark the note with RG, representing my name. But other people would use their initials. So here, maybe it's DL for Doug Larson. But did you do that? He says no. Asked if he worked with McConney, like who this other person who maybe entered it. No, I did not, he says. He says the Trump organization used a different cap rate than Larson advised. So he says, I gave them this estimate, this evaluation, and they used a different rate. And so that was the whole morning session. We got through that pretty quickly. Klasfeld gives us just the highlights. But now they take a lunch break, right? We come back in session. Now, before the break, Doug Larson, the ex-executive, was shown this notation on the data supporting Trump's statement of the financial condition. Larson said this never happened. He testified this never happened. So apparently there's a spreadsheet, and I don't know if these are notes or if somebody's entering these notes in or whatever, but apparently somebody entered this a long time ago. And again, this is going to be a statute of limitations problem that I'm sure they're going to object to, which is like, why are we even talking about it? But all right. So somebody entered this into a note, right? This might have been a lawyer. This might have been an accountant. This might have been somebody who's just doing their due diligence because they're calling around, right? The lawyers are calling around and saying, hey, what can we renegotiate these loans to and these deals to? So somebody entered this into like a log somewhere, 6/30/2015, long time ago. Based on the information provided by Douglas Larson, the guy who's on the stand right now, they say, we had a conversation with him on 11/23/2015, which reflects a rate cap of 3.04% for Wall Street, based on a telephone conversation with Larson on 2016. Since the ground lease still has about 190 years left, the effect on the cap rate is minimal. So to be conservative, we increased the cap rate from 0.25% to 3.29%. Right? So somebody enters this note. And so they're saying, Doug, did you give information to this person? And he's saying, no, that never happened, right? We never talked about that type of stuff. No further questions from the government. So now Trump's counsel jumps up, and now they've got some questions. They say, all right, Doug, I want to show you a transcript of an interview when you spoke with Tishy's office. You said in your interview with Tishy, you said, quote, It's not my valuation. Yes. It could be his valuation or Trump's valuation, but it's not my evaluation, right? And so they're saying, oh, okay. So maybe you didn't, maybe like this wasn't you, okay? Maybe based on information provided by Douglas Larson, you can see where the defense is going. They're going to say, okay, it wasn't you, Douglas Larson, but maybe it was somebody else from Cushman and Wakefield. You're not saying that Trump just made this up out of thin air, are you? Which is where this line of questioning will go, no doubt. But they're saying that, hey, Doug, you just said here that you didn't do that, but in your prior interview, you said that maybe someone else did it. Saying it could be his valuation or Trump's valuation, but it's not my evaluation. So that person or that person, but it's not mine. So on cross-examination then, Trump's lawyer, he shows some other documents. He says, hey, well, what about this document? Now, you said 40 Wall Street was worth so-and-so, right? Right. And Tishy over there says it's worth like $18, right? Yeah. But here, I've got some other documents. Here, in fact, this year, this one says that this could have been worth, what, $735 million. You see this here? He says, yeah. That's one valuation, right? Yeah. And it could possibly be that, probably, right? Maybe. And he says, well, you know, isn't it true that valuations are more like an art form rather than an exact science? And he says, well, I don't know that I'd go that far. I don't know that I'd say that it's an art form, because he's a favorable witness to Tish. And so Klasfeld continues to summarize for us, and he says, you know, so far the defense attorney has not confronted the clear implication of the testimony before the lunch recess. And the implication is that the Trump organization just made up conversations to justify the inflated figure, right? And so they're saying that somebody in Trump's team was just entering these into the entry logs, and they just justified that to make it up. Now, to emphasize Larson, the alleged conversations were from 2015 to 2016, before this case and the investigation that preceded it. Now, Trump's lawyer is continuing. He says, I want to show you a couple of adjustments that you've made in your own evaluations, right? So isn't it true that at one time, at one date and time, you evaluated this building and this property at $200 million, but then just a little bit later, you reevaluated it at $220 million. Wow. So it's not really an exact science, is it? It does kind of change, doesn't it? And Klasfeld reports, he says, the discrepancies at issues in this trial are far larger, okay, from $540 million to $735 million. So Klasfeld, I think, is commenting that the difference, the sunlight between 200 million and 220 is a 20 million margin versus a 200 million margin. Now, apparently, Trump left after the afternoon recess, so maybe he wasn't back in there. He might have had another legal affair to attend to involving ex-FBI officials Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. He had a deposition scheduled today because the FBI officials are now suing him, all right? Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. So Trump's being sued by everybody, and he's also being indicted by everybody. And so the same ex-FBI officials, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, who in my opinion set Trump up and tried to frame him, he is being sued by them, probably for defamation, and they're going to follow the same thing that E. Jean Carroll, Miss Bergdorf got, right? They're going to call him defamation. Every time he speaks, they're going to sue him for defamation. Now, I would argue that they're both public figures at this point, and so it's a different situation, but you get the point. It's lawfare. It's attacking him through lawsuits. So now there's this exchange on cross-examination. Trump's team says, okay, Doug, so the capitalization rate that you used, it was 7%, wasn't it? Yeah. Now, he agrees that that figure is pretty high. He says, yeah, the figure is pretty heavy, pretty high. But here's the thing. The Trump org falsely claimed Larson advised a much lower rate per the testimony, right? So he was using a high rate. Trump's people came back down and say it was a lower rate according to them. And they're ending the takeaway. Klasfeld reports that testimony is adjourned, right? We're adjourned for the day. Larson's cross-exam resumes tomorrow, so we'll be back up, and then there will be minimal redirect. And then tomorrow, we'll get some new witnesses, Jack Weisselberg, David McCardle, 2 people at other firms, including Ladder Capital and Cushman and Wakefield. So that's a taste of what happened in the trial proceeding today. That was from Adam Klasfeld from Klasfeld Reports. Certainly go give him a follow. And now he's doing correspondent work for The Messenger. But the lawfare continues on. Trump showed up for trial today, and they're continuing to attack him every different which way, every single vector that they can. Civil lawsuits, criminal indictments, the list goes on and on. My friends, we'll be here and continue to cover as this case unfolds. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing this video with a friend or family member so they also know what a horrific thing is happening in America. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. And now, my friends, we've got one final segment on the day before we wrap it up and hear from you. But this one is involving D.C. Donald Trump appeals Judge Chutkan's gag order. We knew this was coming. Trump had confirmed that to us when she made the oral ruling in her courtroom. But now Trump has officially made it official and submitted his notice of appeal. And you can see it right here. It is not a very long document. And so we'll go through it right now. And for some reason, the PDF is not up. So let me pull that up for us. It is very short, and I'll be able to grab it very quickly. I thought I pulled it open already, but I did not for whatever reason. That's no worries. We have it right here. Boom. Now let's get our red pen out and see what's happening inside. Trump's notice of appeal submitted out of the District of Columbia, Judge Chutkan's courtroom, 1 page. And of course, this is just the notice of appeal. We know that there's going to be an appellate memorandum and a bunch of other filings that will accompany this at some point later down the road. But there are strict timelines when it comes to filing a notice of appeal. You can't just decide you're going to appeal 6 months later. And so Judge Chutkan issued her gag order, and so Trump turned right around and fired this off, the notice of appeal. And here it is, very simply. President Donald John Trump hereby provides notice that he appeals to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia from the opinion and the order of the Judge Chutkan, October 17th, which he just released, which we'll read. They're appealing it. Respectfully submitted by John Lauro and Todd Blanche. That's it. So we'll see where this goes. Now, we need to know what type of an appeal this is. And it's called an interlocutory appeal. And let's see if we have that written anywhere. And this is what the docket says. A notice of appeal, interlocutory. You see that word right there? Let's learn more about what that means, because we're in the middle of a criminal proceeding right now, and we know that it's very hard to appeal in the middle of a criminal proceeding. Generally speaking, you've got to wait till the end of the trial to appeal the final verdict, unless there's justification for appealing it now. Here's what an interlocutory appeal is. Interlocutory is used to indicate a lack of finality. It's an appeal of a non-final order that was issued during the course of litigation. Of course, we're in the middle of that right now. Now, here is why it's so difficult to get success in these. They tell us, even here from Cornell, that interlocutory appeals are extremely rare. And there's a 3-part test that determines whether this is allowed. So let's ask ourselves this question. Donald Trump has been gagged. He's not allowed to speak. Okay, that is the conduct that is prohibited. The judge is saying that's because the speech is related to conduct that's happening in my courtroom, and I've got lawful authority to curtail anything that might impede with that function. Trump says, well, parallel to your courtroom, judge, I also have the free speech of a political candidate, of an American citizen, someone who's presumed innocent, someone who has the protections of the First Amendment, somebody who is the current leading presidential candidate, arguably in the entire country. and whose prosecution is being brought by his political opponent. So all of those things make this a little bit unusual. And so what we're talking about here is not just Trump's speech relative to his criminal charge, which you might say she's got some capability to curtail, but it is like a Venn diagram, like Kamala. It involves so much other protected speech that is outside of the courtroom, in this case, in American political life and a 2024 election and all sorts of areas, that the question is this a final order as to those other things? Okay, we know the criminal case is going to go on. We know Trump is still going to be prosecuted and he might be sanctioned for some truth posts or whatever. But what the judge has done through this gagged order is shut him up politically. Okay, he can't speak politically. So it is impacting a bunch of other things. We call these things collateral consequences. In the law, for example, you might be charged with a DUI, right? You might be convicted of a crime, and the crime for the DUI might be you go to jail. In Arizona, it's mandatory jail. But there are collateral consequences. There are other things that happen. You might lose your driver's license, which is a separate issue. You might have immigration consequences. Okay, it's a separate issue. You might lose your job if you're a teacher or something, right? Might have a separate issue. Those are separate from the law. So the judge can do something in one courtroom that impacts a bunch of other things. The judge did that. She acted as though her courtroom's the only thing that matters, but it's not. There's a bunch of other stuff that matters. And so if she's going to curtail his free speech, we have to ask ourselves whether this is appealable. So the order which the judge granted must have conclusively determined the disputed question. Question, does Trump have free speech in this country? She says limited. It is conclusive. It's done. Okay. He cannot talk about certain things in his political campaign because she said so. The order must resolve an issue that's completely separate from the merits of the action. Well, the merits of this action, do they involve Trump's ability to criticize his political opponents like Mike Pence or other witnesses of this case who are out on the media criticizing him like Bill Barr? It limits him. In my opinion, it is completely separate. It's his free speech, but it's also not separate because it is more it's more basic than what the judge is trying to do. The judge is trying to protect the jurors in her courtroom. There are many other tools that you can do and use to protect that, but she is sacrificing his free speech rights. So in my opinion, yes, this prong is also met because the judge is ruling on something that's outside of her jurisdiction to limit his free speech. And the order must be effectively unreviewable on appeal from final judgment. Now, what does this mean? If Trump goes to trial and loses, which I fully expect, by the way, okay, so just get yourself ready for that if you're not on board with that idea. Because what we're seeing here, it's like, there's no way they're going to let him win, okay? No way. This is the Coliseum, and it's all been rigged to let this thing go down the way it's going to go down. But sorry to be so black-pilled on that. The point is here. Now, it's effectively unreviewable on appeal from a final judgment. Now, if Judge Chutkan, Trump goes to trial, is convicted, he loses, you might be able to bring up the argument again that Judge Chutkan should have recused herself and she didn't, right? She didn't. So maybe Trump gets a new trial or something like that because that was a bad ruling. And so you could fix that ruling, okay? She doesn't recuse herself. She should have. All right. So what do? We give Trump a new trial with a new judge, and we throw out the old trial with the bad verdict, right? We could do that. We could fix that. But if the judge silences his free speech at the end of this trial when Trump loses, we can't fix that, okay? That's gone. Trump loses his free speech rights for all of that time. He can't criticize deranged thug Jack Smith because the judge said so. And he wants to be able to do that because he's in the middle of a political campaign and because Jack Smith is really a deranged thug, as we know. So there is no recourse, okay? There is no fixing this. If Trump is gagged until the end of the trial, he can't say, I would like to appeal you gagging my ability to speak freely for the last 6 months. No way to fix that. So each of these things, I think, checks the box because it satisfies the collateral order doctrine, and we'll see if this moves forward. Now, The procedure for this is a little bit more complicated, right? Because all of these things need to be checked before it actually moves forward. And that's where we're going to get into some complexities here. But Trump has submitted his notice of appeal, and Chutkan has issued her gag order. So this is officially the gag order, and this is what Trump is appealing. This is how he is limited. We see this is not a long order, 3 pages, filed out of the District of Columbia, United States of America versus Donald Trump. Here's what the judge is writing. Judge Chutkan, presiding, signs off on this one in an order, saying, "All right, Trump and deranged thug Jack. For the reasons set forth during the hearing in this case before that we discussed on the show yesterday, the government's motion, Jack Smith's motion, to ensure that extrajudicial statements Trump's speech is gagged is partially granted in part and denied in part." Here's what she says. Under binding Supreme Court precedent, and this is meaning that she's trying to defer this up to the Supreme Court. Don't blame me. I'm bound by the Supreme Court. This court must take steps by rule and regulation that will protect its processes from prejudicial outside interferences. That's what she's saying. The Supreme Court said, I've got a duty to do something here, because you can just make the law say whatever you want, right? Now, the First Amendment does not override that obligation, is what she says. Quoting, "Freedom of discussion should be given the widest range compatible with the essential requirement of fair and orderly administration of justice. But it must not be allowed to divert the trial from the very purpose of a court system to adjudicate controversies, both criminal and civil, in the calmness and solemnity of the courtroom according to legal procedures." Yeah, it's supposed to be controversies and criminal charges. It doesn't say anything in here about corrupt political prosecutions brought in corrupt jurisdictions. Now, they say this is another quote. "Although litigants do not surrender their First Amendments at the courthouse doors, those rights, the First Amendment rights, may be subordinated to other interests." For instance, let's see what examples she gives us and what examples she leaves out. She says, on several occasions, this court has approved restrictions on communications of trial participants where necessary to ensure a fair trial for a defendant. Here, alternative measures like voir dire, which is jury selection, asking them questions, jury sequestration, and jury instructions are sufficient to remedy only some of the potential prejudice that the government wants to seek. So I've got tools, I know I've got tools, but I don't have everything that I need. So Chutkan says, in order to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings, it is necessary to impose restrictions on public statements by Trump and interested parties. I'm going to gag and censor the administration, Biden administration's political opponents and their free speech. She says, undisputed testimony cited by the government, Molly Gaston, says that when the defendant Trump has publicly attacked individuals, which he makes comments about, right? You see how she's framing this? Attacked individuals, including matters related to those cases, those individuals are threatened and harassed. So Trump says something untruth, somebody else reads it, somebody else says something to one of these officials writes an affidavit, sends it into the court, Trump gets silenced as a result of that. So we're all liable now, according to this ridiculous standard, especially if you have a lot of followers, okay? If you have a lot of followers out there, this is like the, you have more followers than me and I'm offended gag order request. So Trump says something, somebody else says that the deranged thug Jack Smith is a deranged thug, they send him a message, and then Trump gets gagged for that. So his free speech, and by the way, yours too, okay? We have, under the First Amendment, we have the freedom of association, right? We're supposed to. Meaning, if we want to associate with Donald Trump and hear his speech, we should be free to hear that. But no, because some other person who really has already committed a crime, okay? If an individual threatens or harasses a prosecutor, that's a crime. So why doesn't our useless, unjust DOJ go and investigate those people for crimes? Why do they have to gag Trump over it? Because it's not about them feeling threatened or harassed. Go charge them with crimes. You got a bunch of FBI knuckleheads playing around in their coloring books, playing Where's Waldo, trying to still investigate the J6ers. Turn them loose on these people. Go get the people who actually threatened and actually harassed the officials. And by the way, we never encourage that at all, okay? Never threaten or harass anybody. Don't even send text messages or anything, because they'll just make up a threat. But that's my point. Go investigate him. You don't need to curtail his speech. It's not about protecting anybody. It's about gagging Trump. That's it. They want to shut him up because he's too damn effective. Every time he speaks out about how illegitimate it is, more people realize it. More people wake up and go, this is illegitimate. They've indicted him 4 times and his polls keep going up. So they have to shut him up. So since this indictment, the judge says, and even after the government filed this instant motion, Trump has continued to make similar statements, the judge says, attacking individuals involved in the judicial process, including potential witnesses and prosecutors and court staff. Trump has made those statements to national audiences. He has a big following, using language communicating not merely that he believes the process to be illegitimate, because it is, but also that particular individuals involved are liars or thugs or deserve death. Well, I think he says that death is related to treason, and death is one penalty for treason. That's all. Whether they deserve that or not would be up to the official process that they would go through after being prosecuted for treason. But by the way, many of these prosecutors and the people who are involved in this investigation are liars, and they are thugs. Now, the court finds that such statements pose a significant and immediate risk, that witnesses will be intimidated, but they're not going to be intimidated by Jack Smith leaking to the Washington Post or Bill Barr on the media talking about how deranged Trump is or what a monster he is, right? All the witnesses, they will be intimidated by Trump, but they can go out and talk about Trump. Weird. Or otherwise unduly influenced by the prospect of being themselves targeted by threats or harassment, which, again, they could go investigate. So attorneys and public servants and other court staff will themselves become targets for threats and harassment. If they were legitimate, people wouldn't be upset with them. Does that make sense? But they don't want to be legitimate. They would rather stop the criticism being lobbed their direction. So, and the judge says, and that risk is largely irreversible in the age of the internet. Once an individual is publicly targeted, even revoking the offending statement may not abate the subsequent threats, harassment, or other intimidating effects during the pretrial as well as the trial stages of this case. All right. So the judge is just, I think, basically hallucinating a potential problem. The government submitted a couple affidavits of people who should have been investigated for making harassing threats. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But now the judge will hallucinate that Trump's going to say things that are going to cause more witness intimidation and gag him as a result. So saying Trump's position that no limits may be placed on Trump's speech because he's engaged in a political campaign is untenable, and the cases it cites do not hold. The circuit courts in both cases recognize that First Amendment rights must yield to the imperative of a fair trial. Was that an election case, Judge? Are you comparing that, what you just said, to an election case? United States versus Ford and Brown? Were those presidential election cases? Ford may have been. But unlike the district courts in those cases, however, this court, so she's distinguishing those cases. So those cases might have actually been favorable to Trump. Unlike those, this court has found that Trump's statements pose sufficiently grave threats. Okay, so those other statements, yeah, we protected their First Amendment rights, but Trump's statements are worse than those. And the integrity of proceedings, and they cannot be addressed by alternative means. And so now we have to tailor an order to meet the force of those threats. Therefore, the judge says, limited restrictions, as she says, now I think these are monster restrictions, on extrajudicial statements are justified here. The bottom line is that equal justice under the law, of which Trump has seen zero, requires equal treatment of criminal defendants. Again, it's like one of the most laughable phrases you've ever seen. Equal treatment of criminal defendants. This judge and this circuit and this entire thing has been such a sham. But they're going to sit here and they're going to go home at night and they're going to talk about this, right? They probably actually believe it too. I think that's how delusional they are. They say defendant's presidential candidacy cannot excuse statements that would otherwise intolerably jeopardize these proceedings. And so finally, after her little screed there, we get to our final ruling. So accordingly, it is hereby ordered the following, that all interested parties in this matter, including the parties and their lawyers, are prohibited from making any public statements or directing any others to make public statements that target the special counsel prosecuting this case or the staff. So deranged thug Jack Smith cannot be called a deranged thug anymore by Trump or his counsel, but we can call him that because we are not directed to do that. We just call him a deranged thug on our own volition. Defense counsel or their staff, or any of this court staff or any other supporting personnel, or any reasonably foreseeable witness or the substance of their testimony. So like literally nothing, okay? No public statements that target anybody. Now, I don't know what public statements about, like you can't even say, I think Jack Smith's doing a great job. Hey, Jack Smith has finally woken up. You can't say anything that target the prosecuting of this case or any witness or the substance of their testimony. It is a blanket order. Okay, so like just to be clear, we could change this all up. You could say all parties are prohibited from making any public statements that are threatening or intimidating, right? You could just insert, threatening or intimidating right here. That are threatening or intimidating. But no, not that at all. It's just any public statements about them prosecuting this case or any witnesses or the substance of their testimony. So he can't talk about, January 6th, arguably, because a January 6th person might be a witness and January 6th is the substance of their testimony. So it's just, let's continue on. We've got some limits to it. It's extremely broad. It's about as broad as you could possibly get. This order should not be construed to stop Trump from making statements criticizing the government generally. Oh, that's good. Thanks, Judge. Including Biden or the DOJ, statements asserting that he's innocent. Oh, that's good. He can still say he's innocent. Or that his prosecution is politically motivated. So he can say that too. But he can't talk about Jack Smith, so he can't call him a deranged thug. So statements criticizing the campaign platforms or the policies of his current political rivals, like Mike Pence, he can talk about. But maybe not Bill Barr or anyone else who might be a witness, or Mark Milley, for example. So he can only talk about, like she carved out this. This is, my friends, this is so insane. Okay, so this judge will, Mike Pence is a witness. So she will carve out an election exception to this whole thing. No, the election is subordinate to my courtroom. My courtroom reigns supreme except for Mike Pence, who is a literal witness, who actually, maybe a key witness, who was counting the electoral votes on January 6th, except you can criticize him because the election does matter now? There's no logical consistency to this at all. And this is going to be, I think, attacked very nicely. And I think the judge botched this too. She should have picked one side or the other, but now she's threading the needle here. So he can criticize Mike Pence, but not Mark Milley or Bill Barr, who are on TV criticizing him in the middle of an election. So he can only condemn and criticize declared candidates then. Is that right? Not other witnesses or their substance. It's an insane order in an insane times. And so here, in addition, the sealed version of the government's motion is denied as moot. Okay, so she didn't really deny anything. She granted the government what they wanted and placed some slight limitations. So that's good. In a political season, he can still criticize Joe Biden. That's tremendous news. So that's a judge in America shattering our free speech and Trump's free speech, shattering our free association to hear from somebody that we want to associate with. And she's doing it because she wants to gag a political opponent of her political party. And people are joining in on this. Here is Christie, who is saying that Trump's already violated this order. Maybe they should throw him in jail.
So, Governor, Donald Trump is already openly complaining about the gag order and Judge Chutkan. I want to take a listen. You've probably seen this, but everybody may not have, to what Trump said just a couple of hours ago.
A judge gave a gag order today. Did you hear that on speech? Which I believe is totally unconstitutional, what she did. A judge gave a gag order. A judge doesn't like me too much. Her whole life is not liking me.
I think us non-lawyers are trying to evaluate what violates the gag order and what doesn't. I mean, did he already violate the gag order by complaining about Judge Chutkan? What's your view on that?
I don't think so.
He probably didn't violate the gag order, but look, he will. I mean, that's we know, Jen. He will. And the fact is that this is the problem with having a Republican candidate for president who is under indictment in 4 different jurisdictions.
Yeah, by your friends.
These kind of
buddy.
things happen to
by your friends, the people you talk to on MSNBC all the time.
Defendants all the time. Gag orders are often put in place. I was a U.S. attorney for 7 years, and we saw this happen any number of times. You're not allowed to do this. And because he's running for president, he thinks somehow the law does not apply to him. It does. And so the fact is that I think that appears to be, I didn't see the whole order, but it appears to be a pretty narrowly tailored order.
No, it is not.
That tries to prevent him from polluting a jury pool against certain witnesses and against the government. He gets to say it's a politically.
Now, he didn't read the order because it was not out, okay? So he's just commenting on this on Inside Jen Psaki's show, and she was on MSNBC last night, so this was not today. So he didn't read the order. So he's just spreading around fake garbage news. It's a narrow order. No, it's not. We just read it. It's not limiting him from impacting the jury. It's about stopping him from criticizing the prosecution specifically, right? The specific things that are illegitimate he cannot talk about.
Motivated prosecution, if that's what he wants to say. But he doesn't get to attack individuals, which is his, stock in trade. So I think he came close to the line on that one in saying she doesn't like me and that she has a history of not liking me. My guess is it's not going to take that. If she's going to call him on it, it's going to take something much more direct. But look, this is the awful temperament of the guy who is currently the front runner for the nomination of my party. And that's why I'm out here calling him out directly on this stuff, Jen, because his conduct is beneath the office that he was privileged to hold.
Yeah, Chris Christie is such a gentleman that if he was being prosecuted by his political opponents, he would just sit there like a nice guy and just take it. And he would just say, no, it's all perfectly legitimate and we're going to follow the rules and I'm just going to go into court and just shut my mouth up. Yeah, right. Chris Christie never shuts his mouth for anything. He'll be talking more than anybody and doing other things because he can't help himself. But this is another person also on MSNBC. This is Andrew Weissmann, was a big part of the original Trump prosecutions. And here's what he says.
I think it is, but I would give sort of 2 notes or sort of footnotes to that, Nicole. One is I thought it was striking that the government up front conceded that there was absolutely nothing they were asking for that would restrict Donald Trump from criticizing the current sitting president, saying he is not a party to this. You can say any and all things to try and draw.
Can he say something like Biden is prosecuting me in a corrupt manner, and that's why he hired a deranged thug to do that? Can he say something like that? Because that is the type of criticism that we want. It sounds like he cannot say that. So he can say Joe Biden, I guess, is like terrible on the economy or like is wrecking the world affairs and foreign policy, or that the border is a disaster, or that inflation's out of control. But if he says Joe Biden is running a corrupt DOJ to prosecute his political opponents, do you think the judge would allow that?
The sting out of that particular argument that Donald Trump is making, that somehow this is Joe Biden saying he doesn't want to be criticized. That was something that the government up front said, that is not what they're seeking. He can continue to say anything he wants. And in fact, the judge then said that she is not going to bar that. And the second thing is, if you remember that the government's motion here was tailored to trying to protect the jury pool. It was about protecting the information flow to the jury.
Which is total hogwash, okay? Because the DC jury is about 95% Democrat, first. And number two, she can voir dire that. She can ask them, did you hear Donald Trump say that Jack Smith is a deranged thug? No, I don't listen to Trump. Okay. And if they said, yes, I did that impact your ability to be fair and impartial here today? No. Great, come on the jury. So Trump should be able to say whatever he wants. And in fact, if Trump talks, openly about it, that would help us identify some of the jurors who are hyper partisan, right? Get rid of them so we get a fair and impartial jury.
That's not really how the judge ended up ruling. The judge ended up saying, I understand that, but I can deal with that issue when we pick a jury. What I'm concerned about is violence. And so the line that she drew was, you can attack institutions. You can attack DOJ. You can attack the institution of the executive branch, the White House, Joe Biden himself.
Special counsel.
But you cannot attack prosecutors and their families, judges.
So we do want to attack the prosecutors, okay? Not their families and not them personally, but the special counsel's office, it is illegitimate. And they are a bunch of deranged thugs in there who are prosecuting their political opponents. That's the point. We don't want to criticize the DOJ generally speaking. It's this instance that is a corrupt affair. And it's multiple of them. It's also in Florida and DC. And Big Fanny, and Tish James. So it's meaningless to say that Trump can criticize the Biden people if he can't criticize them on the one thing he wants to criticize them about.
And their families, the judge's staff, jurors, and witnesses. So she was very, very concerned about something that I think she's looking at what happened in New York. She said she was looking at that. And she was concerned about the trying to forestall the problem of violence being taken and in response to the former president's words. And so that's why you see this differentiation in her ruling as to what's allowed and what's not allowed.
All right, so pretty terrible analysis, okay? He walks us through this. The judge has said the opposite of basically what he said. Says when he's attacked individuals, we've got a duty to keep all of this together. And again, I don't think he actually read the order, so maybe I'm being a little bit unfair to him. So those were the things that he said after, I think that was last night. So he didn't actually read the official order. So, maybe I'll lighten up on him a bit. But here, Trump is gagged. In my opinion, it is politically motivated. He can continue to say that his prosecution is politically motivated, but he can't talk about Jack Smith or even maybe the special counsel's office. So it's an outrageous thing that we're seeing here. Now they're trying to play it cool, right? They're not going to have a motion that says Trump is gagged from speaking. Obviously not the case. They always frame this stuff as we have to do it to save grandma, right? You got to lock down to save grandma. You got to censor information to save grandma. And we love grandma here, but we want free speech. We don't want to gag our presidential candidates because it's so dangerous that we have to save Jack Smith's grandma or whatever, right? Enough with the hypotheticals. Give us our free speech back. Give us our free association back. Trump is obviously going to be appealing this, as he should. I hope the Supreme Court steps in on this and confirms to us that the criminal process is not the only sanctified process in this whole country, okay? Just because Chutkan is prosecuting Donald Trump doesn't mean the rest of the world comes to a standstill. We've got half of America that wants to see and hear from Trump, and they're going to try to shut it up in the middle of an election. And I get concerned about this, my friends, because when you shut people up, it turns the whole place into a pressure cooker, and they would just love for something else to happen that they can rig or blame on the right. And so we'll continue to cover this, my friends. It boils my blood to no end. Thank you for joining us and subscribing and sharing this video with a friend or family member so they know what Judge Chutkan is doing to Trump. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. We covered some good ground. The appeal of the Chutkan Gag Order is underway. Trump showed up in New York furious that they're continuing to do this to him. And we also talked about Jim Jordan and the betrayal by the Republicans voting him out or not voting him in, rather. And so now, my friends, it is time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about this over from our amazing community and our amazing supporters at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and join us over there. We do member-only streams in the morning. We already had, our first stream was already this morning, and so hopefully you join us for our next stream tomorrow on the live stream and our Saturday shows, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come and join us. Also, don't forget to check out and sign up for our daily newsletter. If you want the news delivered to your inbox every day after the show, go to robertgovea.com, sign up for the newsletter, get access to the mind maps, read the show reports. It's all over there, and we'll look forward to seeing you at either one of those locations. But today, let's say what's up to our amazing donos and our amazing friends who support the work that we do here. Starting us off in the house is our friend Dolphin Fan is the man on the day, bringing in new membos. Woo, woo, look at this. That was from yesterday. Man, I am all discombobulated. Where are we at? Totally discombobulated. Here we are. Dolphin Fan gives so many donos, it's hard to keep track of all of them. Thank you, Dolphin. But bringing in Angela G, Country C, Mike M, Diana D, and Renee C, all coming in courtesy of Dolphin Fan is the man in the house. And thank you, Zach, for clipping for us today. We got Steve H, also became a supporter. Welcome aboard, Steve. So we'll see you tomorrow on our members-only stream in the morning. We'll see you on Saturday on our Saturday-only members show. Saturday members-only show, rather. And to our YouTube friends, if you're a member, join us on Telegram. Okay, so navigate over. On YouTube, you can go over to the community tab section, navigate down to the Telegram link. We'll see you there for our members-only after party, which is going to happen today, right after the show. Good to see you, Steve. A Bad Poets here says, if they can stop Trump from free speech, they will take it from you like a snap. Just welcome the police state. Tech censorship, 1984, here we come. Resist. I couldn't agree more. Look, if they can stop a presidential candidate from speaking in the middle of an election, who's like the leading one, we're living in a whole new world, and it's a big problem. So we're going to keep covering this, and I really hope more people start speaking out about this so that the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court start recognizing that the line stops here. Leanne Wilson, what's up, Leanne Wilson? Woo, became a member. Good to see you, Leanne, as a member over on YouTube. And so we'll see you hopefully on the morning streams and in the after party. And we're glad that you joined up. Thank you, Leanne. Makina Realty Maui is here, selling realty in Maui, or doing something with realty, or something, I think. Makina Realty Maui, making a dono, $10. Thank you for that. And thank you for being a member. And man, I always think one day maybe I'll need some real estate in Maui. Thank you, Makina. Stephen Mosher's here. Says it's obvious that Mar-a-Lago is worth more than 18 million. But then he goes nuts and says 1.5 billion, demonstrating what the case is all about. So I see what you're saying. So Stephen Mosher's like, oh man, just like Trump, give us like a fair market value so that we don't, he's like, what are you talking about? It's like $25 trillion. And Tishy's like, huh? See? Huh? I see what you're saying, Stephen. Now, in my opinion, okay, it's not Tishy's business to go in and unpack all of this stuff. Like, if Trump makes a valuation and the bank accepts the valuation and there's no harm and they're not even a complainant in this, it's like, what is she doing? It's obviously it's political, and I want to know who the harmed party is. And a lot of this stuff is also outside the statute of limitations anyways. So, but I get your point, Stephen. It's pretty funny, actually. Trump's like, no, it's like $1 trillion. Yeah. That's pretty funny. It's sitting on an oil field, actually. Mar-a-Lago is sitting on the biggest oil field in the world. Or whatever. Here's Pickle Jars for Hillary. That's funny. Says, how is LJ not jury tampering by Democrat standards? LJ being Tish James. And so, it's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I agree completely. So in her case, there is no jury, obviously. But you could say that she's impacting the jury elsewhere. Prosecutors generally don't talk about who they are prosecuting. And she's an attorney general in a civil prosecution of Donald Trump. So again, she's allowed to speak, okay? Jack Smith is allowed to leak to the Washington Post. They're all allowed to leak, and talk, except Donald Trump. And many of these witnesses will be out in the media condemning Trump for the entire election, and he's not allowed to respond to them because they might be a foreseeable witness? Give me a break. Hey, NY Reno's in the house, says, over on Locals, says the average person within moments of hearing the facts of the New York Trump Properties lawsuits concludes how unfair and ridiculous it is. You know, I do think there's some truth to that. Even though a lot of people in this country are, you know, communists, I think they still appreciate property rights. You know, like even the communists appreciate property rights. Like they all, you know, like you steal something from them when they get their cars broken into in San Francisco, they're all outraged about it. You know, they generally don't come out and say like, hey, I love giving stuff to other people. You know, they all, like, for example, they want to welcome everybody into the country, but then not in their neighborhoods, right? Not in my backyard. No, we're a sanctuary city, just not here in the nice parts of Bel Air. So it's a curious thing that happens. And when people see other people's property and their hard-worked assets that they built up over the years stolen from them, I think that just feels instinctively wrong, because I think property rights are, you know, human rights. Why? Because you take your life, you take your labor, which is yours, and you mix it with this world, and you use your God-given skill set to create something. And when somebody just steals that from you, that's like stealing a part of your life away. And that's why when the left tries to do that, we all blow our gaskets, rightfully so, because they're stealing our livelihood away from us, which is what taxation is, which is theft, but make sure you pay your taxes. However, the far progressive left, you know, the Obama, the quote, "you didn't build this crowd," believe Trump's wealth is an unfair concentration of power. The far left wish to destroy this country and preside over the ashes. Well, they're okay with rich people as long as they're rich people. Like, you know, Oprah, for example, or the Obamas are very rich, or George Soros, very rich, or Mark Zuckerberg, right? They love those Zuckerbucks. They just want the money to go back to them. They're not demanding Mark Zuckerberg give up all his wealth or whatever. He just uses it to their own ends. So good to see you. Good doctor in the house. We got Tara Rayners here. What's up, Tara? Became a supporter. Very nice to see you. We'll see you on the members only streams. And another one from Makina Realty Maui. Amazing. Makina Realty Maui. Thank you for 2 donos today. I hope you're having a beautiful day over there in Maui. Sure, it's beautiful. Barb's loves Alaska. Says, at what point does it go to the Supreme Court with this gag order by Judge Chutkan? We'll see. We'll see. I think that this appeal could go up to the D.C. Circuit. If they lose there, they could go up to the Supreme Court. And I think at some point, this issue will arrive at the Supreme Court. Like, this is a major issue. Major. And they're going to have to settle this. And we'll see what they do with it. NY says, it sounds like an executive branch function this judge is co-opting. Jack Smith had been admonished by the chief judge for prior prosecutorial misconduct. The judge stepping in seems to be a separation of powers issue. Well, the judge has the authority to control her courtroom. So the fact that, you know, but her stepping into the political process, I think is outside of her jurisdiction, totally. And so limiting Donald Trump's free speech rights is a constitutional violation that I don't think she can get. You know, the judge can control her courtroom, but she can't violate the Constitution. She might think that it's subordinate to hers, but I don't think so. That's not my opinion, because look, it's not the founder's opinion, okay? Because if you're being prosecuted by a corrupt prosecutor, the only defense you have is your voice, isn't it? The only way you can save that from compounding is to speak out about it, make it known, rally support to you, get people to vote for you, and change the corrupt entity. If you don't have speech, you can never fix it. So for her to take that away from him, it's literally undermining the very reason we have free speech in this country, which is to petition our government for a redress of grievances. In this case, the redress of grievances is Jack Smith is a deranged thug. Zulu's here. Says, should Chutkan be prosecuted for her unprecedented and totally not common orders? Or should a defendant who is not above the law just not obey them? Or both? So very confusing question there from Zulu. But here, Judge Chutkan, yes, should be prosecuted for violating constitutional rights, right? If they're prosecuting Trump for made up garbage, sure, prosecute the judge. Although she's going to have qualified immunity, so you can't do that. But you get the point. And quite frankly, I agree that they are totally not common orders, because this is a presidential candidate and she's gagging a presidential candidate, usurping his ability to speak freely in the middle of an election campaign? Or should a defendant, in this case Trump, who is not above the law, just not obey them, or both? Well, it's another thing too. So in some instances, I think that Trump is actually literally above the law. That's what the president is. Like, they are the root enforcement of the law. They are the enforcer of the law. So they are, the executor of the law. So certain things do not apply to them the same way that they do to other people. But if Trump is really put under an unconstitutional order, yeah, maybe he should just not obey them, right? Not obey them, because they are unconstitutional. Now, no other person in this country would have the heft and the gravitas and the people at their back to be able to do that. But if anybody in this country could, it's Trump. And if Chutkan says that he can't speak out about the Justice Department in a pointed way that is relevant to the election, in my opinion, his free speech rights overtake her courtroom's interest in the due process of this particular trial. It's a national election versus a much more localized criminal trial. And the First Amendment comes before the due process clause, right? So, sorry, Judge Chutkan, first comes before the fifth. So that takes priority over what you want to do in your courtroom. And I hope the Supreme Court comes out and explains that. But thank you, Zulu, for the question. It was a confusing one, so hopefully I threw something out there that can stick. But yes, they should all be prosecuted. Hey, Woods Precision Arms is here. What's up, Woods? Been a member for 2 months, my friends. And man, the first month is always the hardest. So if we have you for the second month, hopefully we see you stick around. But Woods Precision Arms says, Robert, you kick wholesale A, my friend. And thank you, Woods. So do you, my friend. Thank you for the very nice dono. Thanks for being a membo. And oh my goodness, look at Zulu. 20 months. How many babies is that? Oh my gosh. It's definitely over 2. We're getting close to 3 babies, Zulu. Zulu, thank you for being a member. And I want a special shout out to Zulu. Zulu made a very generous dono over to Eric's house. And he says, get your membership perks. And we've got some more of these coming too. We've got some more Membo perks coming out, but I don't want to tease them too soon. So we're excited about some new stuff we're working on that we'll be rolling out. Really going to double down on our Membos. And so thank you, Zulu, for being a Membo for 20 months. Hey, Bacon Seeds is here. What's up, Bacon Seeds? Says, just cuz, love your shows. Don't catch many live, but thank you for all the breakdowns. Hey, Bacon Seeds. Which, thanks for being here and thanks for the donation. But why has nobody invented that yet? Is that what you're working on? And Bacon Seeds, you've been a member. Look at that diamond, baby, for 1 year over on Locals. Thank you, Bacon Seeds. And thanks for dropping by. But Bacon Seeds need to be invented because that way they could just grow. Like I could have like a couple plants of them, and they just grow little dangling bacons. And if you could get different seeds, like for extra crispy, that's the one that I'd like. All right, so good to see you, Bacon. Raymond Loera says, did the Chutkan judge order extend Trump's Miranda rights to his lawyers? Thanks and happy Taco Tuesday. Did the Chutkan judge extend Trump's Miranda rights to his lawyers? So I think that there was really no need for her to extend them. I think they already have them. They're already in their possession. But it's a good question. Like, did they read them their Miranda rights because they might be breaking the law soon? Yeah, so Miranda rights, these from the movies. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do can be used against you, blah, blah, blah. All that, if Trump violates this order, or if the lawyers violate the order, they might face some sanction possibility, right? They might face some actual criminal penalties is one possibility. So if they did violate the orders, then somebody might read them their Miranda rights if they were going to be charged with a crime like being held in contempt of court or something. What's up, Bonnie? Says the more they go after Trump, the deeper they dig their own graves. And I agree with you on that, Bonnie. And I think I got that vibe even from Trump yesterday. We played the clips from Trump yesterday, Bonnie. I think you were here. And on that show, Trump kind of seemed like nonplussed. He just kind of was like, well, whatever, we're just going to keep going. Because I think he recognizes that. And I think there's truth to this. I mean, I got to tell you this, my friends. Every time they do something like this, my personal support for Trump goes up 10% at least. I was like, it was already pretty high, but you get the point. It's like, all right, let's keep going, man. I'm so irritated. It fires me up. Like, this should not be happening in this country. And it is. And thank you, Bonnie, for being here. A Bad Poet says, hearts to see a handful of renegade Democrats vote Jim. Would love to see a handful of renegade Democrats vote Jim. Yeah, but they never break ranks. They're good little communists. They all just march in line with one another. What's up, A Bad Poet? Flash River is here, says the gist of the matter is, will the Supreme Court allow election interference? I don't know, man. I get nervous about it. I don't think, Trump appointed some of those Supreme Court justices, but I'm not so sure that they're fans of Trump, to be quite frank with you. So I don't know. We'll see. I sure as heck hope not. Because the point is, if the Supremes allow it here, it's over. It's going to happen every time. Everybody's just going to prosecute everybody. Crashes here on Locals says, Tanya Chutkan, who is the judge, says the appeal was entitled interlocutory in parens. In fact, the Trump team could caption the appeal as a writ of prohibition or mandamus looking to original jurisdiction. Yes or no? You mean going up to the Supreme Court? So I think so. Original jurisdiction. So we talked a little bit about this crash yesterday. So in other words, the lawsuit would be, you sue civilly, saying your constitutional rights have been violated under a civil rights violation lawsuit, right? Trump files a free speech civil rights violation lawsuit. Then in that court, gets a mandamus or gets something that he uses back in this case, that causes a conflict. Maybe then you get original jurisdiction on the Supreme Court. So it's all procedural. It's who goes first and how. And right now, the first avenue that we've done right now is Trump is just appealing directly up to the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. So I think there are a lot of other things that are possible. We don't know yet. We'll see. Good question. Pinochet's Helicopter Tours says Trump will be their justification to pack the court. That's another interesting, thinking one move after the next. Trump will be their justification to pack the court. So if the Supreme Court comes back down and says Chutkan is unconstitutional or rectifies these criminal prosecutions somehow, then they're going to turn around and pack the court. They'll try. Barb's Loves Alaska's here, says, can Judge Chutkan be impeached by the House and the Senate in 2024 if we keep the House and take the Senate? Because she's an appointed judge and not voted by the people. Yeah, so I think, yes, they can impeach her and remove her. It's very uncommon, very unlikely. But yes, they could certainly do that, right? Congress can remove federal judges via impeachment from Barb's Loves Alaska. Now, I don't think they'll do that, And it's DC, so are they going to, she's not going to recuse herself. Yeah, it's a mess. First Amendment says, sorry, Rob, my wallet is low. No sorries at all, my friend. Any little bit helps, guys. I appreciate it. It says, I'll refill it as soon as bacon seeds. I'll refill it soon. Bacon seeds is a farce. How do I know? I planted some bird seed and you guessed it. No birds grew. Great show as always. Hey-yo. That's pretty funny. So bird seeds, no birds grew. And so bacon seeds aren't going to work either. Oh, man, don't you hate that? Man, at bacon seeds, that's $1 billion idea right there, right? If somebody can invent bacon seeds, let me know. I'm an investor. I'm in. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the day. Thank you very much for those lovely donos. Let's see what's happening over on the X platform, where we are also posting our segments now. And we also have our community on the X platform. It looks like this. It's called Watching the Watchers. And so if you want to come over there and say what's up to the Watcher community, you can come and join us. Say what's up to other friends out there like John McGarvey's, who's in the house. Raven Madness is over there. You can meet some people like Rosie Posey, who's posting some memes about Trudeau. And so there's some fun stuff over there. But let's see who's joining us today on the feed. And we've got 7 viewers in the house. Ooh, it's pretty crazy over here on the X. Who's here? We've got Danny McWilliams says, just to set the record straight, I am not suing Trump. Good to know. Good news on that. Everyone else is, Danny. So the fact that you're not is good. Everyone else is. Hey, V's here says the Constitution has been redacted so much, it's now the consecration, is what that redacted thing says. Redacted. Consecration is what I'll call it. Here, Fred Pedamonte says, quid pro quo. Danny says, I can't post what I want to say, but there needs to be a board that oversees the judges. And George is here, says, fishy tishy, thanks, Rob, and go watching the Watchers. Fishy tishy, and go watching the Watchers. And here's another photograph of Judge Chutkan. Here she is, right here, Judge Chutkan. Now, I haven't seen this one before. Looks familiar to me. I knew I'd seen her before somewhere, but that's apparently Judge Chutkan. That's from other side of the mountain over on the X platform. And there's some more good replies over there. So certainly, this one came in from Troublemaker Jonah, which was, under the thing. Says, one thing that is certainly inferred with this order, is that that's why it was censored, is because they're talking about Jack Smith's manhood. That's why. Got it. All right. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. And we are going to leave it there. Members, come and join us at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. YouTube members, join us on the private Telegram group for the members only after party. We do hang out after the show and hang out with our members and our supporters, and we'd love to see you there, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. But before we wrap it up, want to say shout out to our mods and our meme smiths who mod down the fort for us and keep things nice and orderly. John McGarvey's in the house. Donut Mind Me. We've got Dog Digger, Janek 909. We got John Allen's here. Zach Nichols clipping away for us. Thank you, Zach. Today, Beyond Geostars, our friend Zulu's in the house. Ronnie Cole, Playing Hooky, Just Cause, K Bean, and our friend Vientikis Prime, all in the house. And we had a couple extra donos come in. Thank you for closing us out. Pookie's Ma says, but it's not about Trump. It should be looked at as if Trump is interchangeable with any other American. Well, we all should have our free speech, no doubt about that. And the judge is censoring all of our abilities to hear from him as well. Heart Ponder also is here. Thank you, Heart Ponder. No message, but a very nice dono from Heart Ponder. And so, Heart, thank you so much for sending that and for stopping by on the day. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Hey, Wood's Precision Arms. Wood says, if we had bacon seed, we could plant a wall of them and keep radical terrorists out. It's true. It could be a border solution. Oh, because of the bacon. I was thinking you could just stack them up on the border. How tall are the bacon seeds? How tall are the bacon seed plants? You could just have a whole orchard of them. And then anybody coming across the border would probably be stopped because they would just be so enamored with all of the bacon. You know what I'm saying? So it'd be like a good deterrent. Anyways, good to see you, my friends. So that is it for us on the day. We are going to leave it there. We're heading over to our members only after party right now. And so we would love to see you there. But if not, well, we're going to be back here tomorrow to do it all again. And I hope to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.